For me, it's like I watched Iron Man when I was a kid, and I'm like, this is peak. And then I watched the Hulk when I was a kid, same year. I'm like, yeah, Marvel's dead, man.
Let them fight.
All right, we rolling. I know that because I'm the one who did it. So,
It's up to you.
hey everybody, welcome back to the Podcastle, the #1 podcast according to facts and logic. Real quick, if you're still here, I'm thinking about making the Podcastle its own channel and separating it from the main channel. So I'm going to put a poll in my channel page once this video goes live. So just check on that and vote. Do you want it to be part of the main channel or be its own channel? It's up to you guys. Now, we're gonna start off this video by I'm just gonna introduce people. This is my brother Tay, cousin Kyle. He was in the last Star Wars episode that we just recently posted, not like a couple months ago.
I dressed out for it once again, as you can see.
He says he XD.
First thing I thought, you said you wanted to do a Marvel podcast.
It's pretty funny. We're gonna start off this podcast with a reaction of a trailer.
Oh yeah.
I'll say the first 30 seconds of a trailer. And
Why is Iron Man in the thumbnail for the Marvels trailer? It's just reusing all the footage.
Right. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
Me waiting for a new clip.
Yeah.
you can keep waiting.
Oh, okay. Okay. This is just AI making these trailers.
All right, we're about 25 seconds in, and now we have finally seen a clip from the actual
Okay,
movie.
I see.
That's really all I wanted to show. All I'm going to say is that none of that has anything to do with the movie. Now that I've seen it myself,
Yeah.
It's not about Iron Man.
it's
He
not
doesn't come back.
not about. I don't know if they even mention Iron Man's name.
I don't think they say Iron Man once. It's
It's fake news. It's not in the movie. It's fake news.
That is the tone setter for this podcast, as Marvel's pretty much dead right now. I'm not going to say that it's impossible for them to come back, but let's just say they have an uphill battle. Just looking at the Marvel's box office sales, it made it like 47 million. It did lower than The Flash, and quite frankly, I didn't think that was possible. So,
Oh, it's pretty possible.
so it tanked, it bombed. It's in some ways I'm sad. I'm saddened by it because it's like, you guys used to be so like the pinnacle of box office success, and I was rooting for it, and I wanted Marvel to succeed, but at the same time, it's if you make your bed, you lie in it. They've been disappointing me for a long time now. They've been disappointing Kyle for a longer time.
That's all they've done.
and they've
been disappointing me for a shorter time.
yeah. Well, and the fob's actually still waiting for it to
I
be
think.
bad.
Well, let me see. Guardians 3 was really good. I mean, come on now.
That's there you go. That's what everyone always says. Point is,
Whenever it's the three of us on, it's always like Goldilocks, where these things affect us at a different level.
it's like it's great, it's bad, just right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask 3 questions pretty much. We're gonna ask, when did Marvel peak? Through all 3 of us. When did Marvel die? Or when did Marvel stop just hitting? Like, when was it like, it's okay. It's just not like, I'm not feeling it. And what was the movie that made us like, wow, Marvel is completely fallen off. It's dead. So, for this first one, when did Marvel reach its peak? We're gonna go start with you, Fob, Tay. When did Marvel reach its peak? When were you like peak Marvel?
I think peak Marvel was
We have a whole list of all the movies over here.
Infinity War.
Infinity War.
Yep.
That's when Marvel.
Into Phase 3? Where is that?
That's about. It looks weirdly enough. It looks like
middle.
it's halfway through Phase
I don't
3.
even know how it's possible, but
Halfway through Phase 3.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely Infinity War is peak.
Okay, so we got Infinity War. Why is Infinity War peak?
It was peak fiction. I mean, come on. I mean, like if you look at it, every act was like so heat. Every act was fire.
Every act was fire. But like, why is it representative? I'm actually not disagreeing with you.
It has basically it brings all the characters together. Characters like the Guardians and like the Avengers are working together, which you haven't seen yet. They haven't interacted before that.
Well, not in the MCU.
Not in the MCU, obviously in comics or whatever they probably did. But yeah.
No one read their comic books, so
That's fine. This is an MCU episode, not like a Marvel episode.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
MCU.
It's two very different things.
Exactly. I'm not as hip onto the comic book lore as I wish I was. I read a lot of Spider-Man comics, and that was about it.
Yeah.
But all right, so basically, it's just the culmination of everything that they'd been working towards
In one
movie.
epic movie. Yep.
Okay. All right, Kyle. When would you say that the peak of the MCU? Where was that at?
It's tough to say because like each of the phases, I'm looking at a lot of them and I'm like, these are a lot of lackluster ones. And for reference, I haven't seen anything in Phase 4 or afterward.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah, I just stopped watching them. I know what happens in all of them pretty much though. I would say if I choose like it's hard to say. I have like peak movies of theirs, but not like a peak era. I'd probably say Phase 3. If I was to say a movie, it'd probably be Avengers 1 or Iron Man 1. But Iron Man 1 is just the first episode of it, so it's like
The greatest pilot of all time.
pretty much. But I'd say like those are the two like peak movies. But if it was a peak phase, it'd probably be Phase 3, I guess.
What makes Avengers 1 so special, I guess?
So you have the sort of team up concept in both. They tend to save. They make the Avengers movies a certain way, different from how they make like each Avengers movie, like the plural Avengers, like how they make like Captain America ones or make Iron Man ones. There's a different style to it. I forget if it's the same director for like Iron Man and Avengers, but I know when they bring on the director for the Avengers, and that's when they have to like there's a culmination of writers more so, and then there's a culmination of the characters. So I think what makes the first one pretty peak for me is that it did a great job of just actually nailing that kind of team up, where typically what you worry about with these kind of things, like Spider-Man 3 was putting in a lot of characters, right? But people say that it didn't really handle that well.
Debatable.
I do think that's debatable, but I see their point where some of the things weren't very developed at that point, and Avengers 1 was the first time, I think in most movies, I could probably think of another example where it's like they basically have a crossover event, but that was like the first time definitely for superheroes in live action where they pulled together like a lot of different characters and they made it work. Like they balanced it.
They stuck the landing.
Yeah, they stuck the landing pretty well. They balanced the characters' time pretty well. I thought they were all pretty accurate to at least the latest movies that they were in. None of them were acting out of character. I felt made sense to me. The dynamics were interesting. And that was back when I think they had like good reason to argue with each other when it actually made sense. And I'm like, yeah, they would think like that. That's pretty cool. The villain and like it's nothing grandiose, or it's grandiose, but it's nothing like Machiavellian. It's not complicated, but
it feels like it knows what it is, but it executes what it is very well.
Exactly.
And
it was simple, but it nailed it though.
Yeah, and I think that's what I really like about Avengers 1 is like it, as you said, it's this event of like it feels like there's this magnitude to it while also being simplistic, which is honestly to me like the vibe of a lot of comic books, where it's when you really like think about a comic book or you break it down and you read it, it's quite simple a lot of times, but it executes its simplicity so well where you can think about it and be like, yeah, that was really good. And
It's really interesting when you go back to the comics. It's not that the comics. The comics are kind of nothing like the movies.
yeah, I mean, they're different for sure. I think with Avengers 1, it was interesting because I just posted my review, or not really review, but how I would fix the Marvels this last Saturday. And when I was pulling up like clips to just kind of plug in for like B-roll, I was pulling up a clip from the Avengers 1 to say like, this is when like Nick Fury used to be cool, because he's not cool in the Marvels. I'm gonna be honest. He is. We called him Sleepy Nick because he was
Sleepy
like
Nick Fury.
He seemed like he's like, why am I still here? And I think that when I was pulling up that clip from Avengers 1, I was like, this looks like kind of hype. Like it was
Yeah.
it wasn't like I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going back to the good old days. I just wanted some B-roll. But
It's got great energy. That movie is like pretty good paced. It's not like you're on Adderall like when it's watching Star Wars Episode 9 where it's just breakneck pace, like not stopping for anything, not leaving anything to cook or anything. It's just like constant scenes and dialogue and just pushing it through really fast. But Avengers 1 I think did really well at just keeping a really good pace and good energy throughout it, and it's like, wow, you're getting through it pretty fast and a lot of good stuff's happening. Every time I think of a lot of those scenes, not that like every scene is perfect, and it's a flawed movie still, it's just that there's just a lot of great scenes in it where if you try to actually put it under the microscope, it's like, this is really well done. Like, it's well directed, and like the scenes have a reason to be there, and I'm glad that they're there. It's not like I wouldn't want them cut out of the movie.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, well, when I was taking my film classes at college, they were basically saying if you can cut a scene out of a movie and the movie would still flow fine, that scene needs to be cut. And Avengers 1 is like, you're like, yeah, there's nothing that can really be cut here. Like, everything serves the plot, everything serves the story. Super well paced. It brings people together in a way that doesn't feel like natural. As you said, the dynamics are great in Avengers 1. I mean, Avengers 1 is like, I don't love it now, and I don't know if it's because I watched it so much when it came out, like I got sick of it, and it just was like, oh, it's like whatever. But it's at the time, and even like now, it's very impressive what it did, and it was somewhat unprecedented. So I think Avengers 1 is sort of being this pinnacle of like at its best before you get into like phase 2, 3, and 4. I think that's a pretty decent answer.
That's how I felt too about it when it came out. Well,
Yeah.
when it came out, it was like my favorite movie because I was a kid and I was like, I love superheroes. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's the Avengers, man. You gotta love it.
Exactly.
And it was like, then I watched it too much. So like a few years after, I kind of got sick of it. And then later, I came back to it like for the first time in a long time, and I'm like, wow, this is really good. Why can't they make them like this?
Yeah, no, and it's especially when you compare it to the newer phases. Like, you watch anything from phase 4 for the most part, and it's almost like, and you go back and watch Avengers 1, and it's like the nothingness you feel from phase 4 is like not present in Avengers 1. If you go back and watch it, Avengers 1, it still holds up, especially if you haven't seen it in a while. Recommend checking it out. For me, what do I think is the peak of the MCU? The Marvels.
Yeah.
Peak cinema.
Eternals.
I really love Captain Marvel. She's a very interesting, charismatic, deep character. No!
Can you believe we had to go through all phase 4 without Captain Marvel? We almost didn't make it.
That would have been tragic. Well, we did, actually. We're into phase 5. We went with no Captain Marvel in phase 4. It was
Came in to rescue us.
she's here to save phase 5. Peak Marvel for me. So it's gonna be fun with the second question. I also agree with my brother, and I think Infinity War is probably like, when it comes to like everything that they've been building up. I mean, you look at the list of movies we have here, and it's it's like all of the superheroes, the main superheroes had their trilogy at that point. Iron Man, Captain America, Thor had like a trilogy. You introduce some of the new people, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy, Black Panther, get them kind of invested a little bit more, and then you bring them all together for this event that has such magnitude to it and has so many characters, yet I feel like it balances it really well. Like, to go to Avengers 1, there's less characters, so I think you get a little bit more of a more intimate personal relationship with the characters in Avengers 1, but it also feels more light and almost fluffy in some ways, and I don't know if that's because Joss Whedon was doing it. He has a different style.
It's interesting because like with their own movies, before like Phase 3, pretty much anything could happen in their own movies.
Yeah.
Where it feels like after that they're trying to build the continuity a little bit better and be like, okay, we have to have an excuse for why the other Avengers don't show up when DC is being attacked.
Exactly. No, and yeah, and
but before that, it's sort of like they can still be their own thing. Like each movie of an Avenger can still be its own property.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it pretty good. And that was one joke I remember really thinking was funny in Ant-Man. And at the end of Phase 2 is when he's like, I think the first thing we need to do
is call the Avengers.
Is call the Avengers. And they kind of, to be fair, their excuse for not calling the Avengers was pretty stupid, but like at the same time, it was pretty funny.
I don't remember what they said, but to me,
he was like,
it just kind of makes sense.
He's like, my Ant-Man suit is way better than Tony Stark's Iron Man garbage, and I'm like, I guess so. If you say so, Scott.
Yeah. Well, also like
that's the next Podcastle episode: Ant-Man versus Iron Man.
Okay.
I mean, he went hand to hand with King the Conqueror, who's apparently Ant-Man. A Thanos level threat.
Guess so. Well, Ant-Man also did beat Iron Man. Remember Civil War?
It's true. He didn't. But he flushed him out. He flushed him out of his system, I think.
Oh, maybe he did. I don't remember.
He got into the suit, and then Iron Man like his suit could tell something was in them, so he used some sort of like exhaust thing to get him out. Though if he had gotten in the suit and expanded, it's over.
It's true. If he wanted to kill Iron Man, it'd probably be pretty easy.
Yeah. So
it's like all the sharp metal outside of the suit might backfire, though.
Yeah, I think Infinity War basically is just, as my brother said, the culmination of everything that they're kind of working for, but in an actually good movie. Because I don't think Endgame's like a good movie. It's just a good end to the MCU. But it's like a good movie, great villain, intimidating villain. And there's a sense of weight and scale to Infinity War that's just not present in Avengers 1, and it shouldn't be in Avengers 1 because Avengers 1 is the first one. So there's just there's more characters, and so you can debate whether or not that's a good thing because there's just so much the movie's balancing. But whenever I watch it, it's like I'm so impressed with how they balance so much, and it's like, because you have to hop between Thanos and then the Guardians team and then the team on like the Wakanda, and then and going between all three of them and balancing it in a way that like has the movie flow well, while also having like the most chilling ending in the MCU. Like I remember when Thanos snapped and people just started disappearing, no music at all, which is all. I always like scenes that don't have any music that are intense because it's like they know like they don't need it because the moment is just so immaculate. And
I'm eventually glad I went to see Infinity War in theaters because like it's truly an impressive thing when you're in a theater in the United States for a Marvel movie, an Avengers movie, and at the end of the movie it's completely silent.
It's one of the greatest like theater moments I can like think of in my lifetime.
That part they at least nailed.
Yes.
I have a lot of issues with the movie otherwise, but the ending was like perfect.
Yes. And they nailed it. And so I think that Avengers Infinity War, it's not my favorite movie, in the MCU, but that's not what it's. What is something that's like a representative movie of the peak of Marvel? For me, it's Infinity War. That's what I think it is. Does anyone have any other comments on the peak of Marvel?
So I just think the reason I'd go with Avengers 1 still instead is because I think balancing the characters successfully is just more important generally. They're kind of opposites almost because
Yeah.
Avengers 1 is more of like pretty simple concept and just making sure to get the characters right, where I think Infinity War is more grand scale, is riskier, and then I feel like they really missed on the characters and building them up and getting them right, but the ending was really good. Like it was a really
good end.
It was a thoughtful thing to do, and it was very unique in that way.
Yeah, I think the characterizations were okay, but it definitely wasn't as intimate as Avengers 1, and especially because Avengers 1 was so like pure in a way, because it's like by the time you get to Infinity War, each character has their trilogy. They've gone through like this convoluted, like, I don't want to say like headcanon, but like a different direction where they're no longer as much of like accurate to what you would expect from the characters. And so it's like Civil Wars happened. There's a lot of like beef and baggage that's just not present in Avengers 1. And so it doesn't feel like quite as much of a pure superhero movie. Like I think Avengers 1 might be a better like comic book movie, and I think Avengers Infinity War is like a better like
it's
MCU
more
movie.
more representative of the MCU. I feel the exact same way. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. So moving on to our second question, and I'm gonna have Kyle start this time, and we'll go to me. I'll go to Tanner. When did the MCU? What movie did you watch in the MCU where you're like, you know, it just isn't hitting anymore? Like it's like you know, it's like there's like and what I'll
start with me for that.
Exactly. That's just gonna be fun. It's like I'll try to explain the question a little more. It's like I feel like when you watch movies as a kid, a lot of times
for me it's like I watched Iron Man when I was a kid and I'm like, this is peak, and then I watched the Hulk when I was a kid, same year. I'm like, yeah, Marvel's dead, man.
Well, maybe me explaining my question won't actually help, because I was basically saying as a kid I just liked a lot of things. I'd watch movies and I liked it. I pretty much would just watch. I watched Thor 2 in theaters and was like, that movie was awesome. That's it. That's what I'm saying. There's like this childlike innocence where like the MCU can do no wrong because I see superheroes and that's cool. And that stopped at some point for me. It didn't stop at Hulk, but it did stop for me. But like, so I guess Kyle, Incredible Hulk, but like what is it you watch and you're like, you know, these movies just aren't hitting anymore?
So like I said, you can say it for a lot of it where you could pick out a lot of points where they release something pretty good or something like that's top of the line. Mm-hmm. And then the next movie is just, oh wow, yikes, did that. Mm-hmm. We're just not going to talk about that anymore. I mean, if you look at Avengers 1, it's like after that is Iron Man 3, which I actually kind of like in a lot of ways, but it was not popular. And then Thor 2 is after that, which is like the least important movie out of all of these, maybe. Then Captain America 2 after that, which I don't like, but a lot of people like it, so... And then Guardians 1, it's like, yeah, it's going great, and it's Avengers 2, it's like,
underrated.
And then Ant-Man, which was released to more like, that was fun, it was good.
Yeah.
That was like the reception of Ant-Man.
I was always looking forward to it because I liked the character, but... and I felt that one was good because that one felt like more of a Phase 1 movie where...
Yeah.
Like, focusing on the one character, pretty... like hammy comic book movie sort of.
Yeah.
I thought that was a lot of fun. It was refreshing. So as for when did it like stop hitting? I know your question is more about like when did they start going in like a down.
Well, I'm saying you watched a lot of Phase 3. You said Phase 4. You haven't seen anything.
I haven't seen anything.
Phase 4 and 5.
I know it hasn't been going well.
So that's what I'm saying. It hasn't been hitting. Like it really hasn't been hitting for you. But when were you like, it's kind of mid. Like it's like.
Let's see. I decided to. I think after Infinity War, I saw Ant-Man 2. And I actually liked it when I first saw it still.
Well, it's crazy.
I didn't think it was great, but I still watched it. And then that was also when I was like, okay, now they have to they have to interest me if I'm going to go see these things. I'm not going to keep going seeing every single one of them. Because I'm pretty sure I did see every one of them before that. Yeah, I did. So it'd be like Ant-Man 2, and then I had seen like things about Captain Marvel. I just seen like the reviews on it, and then I was like, I'm gonna test it. I'm gonna watch Endgame and see if I needed to know anything in Captain Marvel. And the answer is no, I didn't, because I already knew who the character was from like the comics. And I'm like, yeah, this checks out.
So the Wombo combo of basically Ant-Man and the Wasp, or Ant-Man 2.
Man, I'm looking at it now. They gave, like, it used to be, it was like Phase 1 has an Avengers, Phase 2 has an Avengers movie, and Phase 3 gave it no time to cook. It was like Infinity War, and the only movies that you get in between Avengers 3 and 4, am I looking at that right? Yeah. Is Ant-Man 2 and Captain Marvel. It's like, wow, you really didn't give that time to cook, huh?
Well,
to be fair, I think it was.
I thought we should have had like a whole phase in that universe where half the people died.
I think Infinity War was like part 1 and Endgame was like part 2. I felt like it was kind of like the same movie almost, but like part 1, part 2.
So
sort of, because they have the same plot, but I think that just.
Well,
I see that as a criticism of Endgame, though.
Well, originally the plot. I think originally the plot was they announced it as Infinity War Part 1 and then Infinity War Part 2. So with the fob,
they did do that.
He's right in that sense, is that like it's more of like a like they almost were saying this is kind of it. This is like the big finale to the MCU. Basically 6 hours of Avengers back to back, but they gave it a year to sort of, and it's like, I will say with Ant-Man 2 and Captain Marvel, it felt like they were kind of like stuffing their turds in between it, because they're like, look, the only way we're going to generate interest for these movies.
Either way, I would say at least everything after Infinity War to me wasn't very impressive, but I guess if you really like Endgame, then it would be after that.
Yeah.
So those would be my answers. Like, because I want to say, if we're talking about when they're running out of ideas, starts in like Phase 2.
Yeah.
When they're out of ideas and they just do like sort of shameless sequels where there's no consequence.
Yeah.
That's how I feel, at least. But you at least get some unique ones occasionally where I'm like, I'm glad they made this. This was a good thing. Guardians 1 was good, and it was like the first time that team was ever in anything successful.
Yeah.
And then Phase 3 had a couple of unique ideas in movies. Like, I'm glad Ragnarok happened. That was very good. It's nothing like the first 2 Thor movies at all. And then there was, there were some other good ones in it too.
Yeah. I think that the Wombo combo of Ant-Man 2 and Captain Marvel for like, yes, or not. You didn't watch Captain Marvel, right? Or did you?
I haven't seen it, no. I'm aware that I haven't seen the female-led MCU movies, and just to put that to rest, you can only blame me for that if you've seen Wonder Woman 2009. I saw the first female-led superhero movie. So
Exactly.
That wasn't the first one either, but I do watch them. It's just I didn't happen to see those.
That's true.
Because it was like, Captain Marvel came out, and I'm like, can I just watch Endgame and be done with it? Like, I already know who the character is. I don't need to see it, I think.
Yeah.
And then I was not watching it by Phase 4.
Well, I didn't watch it until about like two or three years after it came out, and I can tell you all, no, you did not need to see it at all. It was not important. And so, for me, what I think when the MCU stopped hitting for me was Captain America Civil War. Up until that point, I was pretty much down with the program. I watched all of Phase 1 and loved all of it. Unlike Kyle, I was a big fan of the Incredible Hulk. I watched all of Phase...
I actually like it, I just don't think it's an impressive movie.
I just like the Hulk a lot, and I'm really sad that he never got more like better movies. Like I'm sad that like
Thor Ragnarok was the
I'm
best
sad
Hulk
that
movie.
the Incredible Hulk from 2008 is for forever and for always, it seems, going to be the pinnacle of the Incredible Hulk.
No,
in
Thor
cinema.
Ragnarok. What are you talking about?
And
He's very unhinged in that one.
yeah, it's like Thor. Like I said, liked Thor 2 somehow. Like somehow I came out of that movie being like, I am satisfied.
Interesting.
Loved Captain America 2, Guardians 1, Avengers 2. I thought was better than the first one for some reason. Like I said, down with the program. And then I watched Ant-Man and I was like, this movie is lit. Other than I wish Hank Pym was young and he was Ant-Man, because I watched Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes and that's how he was in that.
Yeah, that one.
That was like the only thing I was like, could have been better in Ant-Man. And then I watched Captain America Civil War. The hype leading up to it was immaculate. Everyone was picking sides. We were all debating it.
Oh yeah, that one had like, I want to say more of an impact than Endgame did.
Well,
Or at least people were it felt like people were discussing it.
it.
There was a lot of hype. A lot of hype.
And for me, I was excited. I saw they teased me with Spider-Man, and I'm a big Spider-Man fan, as you might know if you've followed the channel for a long time. And I was like, this is gonna be so great. I watched the movie, left the theater, and was like, that was kind of mid, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like you grow up when you stop being sensationalized about Civil War.
Yes. I was
Be like, oh, was that actually good? Probably not.
And it's like there's movies before, like now that become before Captain America Civil War that I definitely would say Civil War is better than. But like that was the first one that I watched where I was like,
I think it's weird because it's like a technically good one, but there's just a lot of things about it that I think it misses, where like as an art form it just doesn't connect with you very well.
well,
I feel at least.
it's not. If you look at Avengers 1, that is an excitingly shot movie in the sense that like the color grading, it pops. And that's something that Josh Whedon does. The color grading pops, the cinematography is exciting. They put a lot of energy into the action scenes. Civil War's action scenes were not good. It's got like this gray muted thing going on.
Yeah,
And
it's very watered down.
it's just it's just
Movie looks like Skyrim.
yeah. It looks like someone was like took like a comic book movie and then they just turned the saturation down a little bit. It's just like it's an ugly movie.
Yeah, it's a visually looking movie.
And with Spider-Man, I was like when I saw him, I'm like, oh, they're bringing him in. That's cool. But it felt like they just shoehorned him in there so that they could get more butts in seats. And like he showed up for like 10 minutes. They're like, oh, he's here now. He's like, Iron Man likes him, so go watch Spider-Man Homecoming. And so that got me. I'm like, well, I liked him in Civil War, but he's barely in it, and it low-key feels like they just shoehorned him in. If you took Spider-Man out of the movie would stay the exact same. Mm-hmm. Like he doesn't need to be there. So it's like, and there's a lot of that in Civil War, where I was like, man, like this didn't need to be here. This didn't need to be here. They're just doing it for like the sake of cameos, and that's when that like plagues all of Phase 4, where it's like they just do things for the sake of doing things, and that's when things get really bad. And like Civil War is kind of like that movie that represents for me a lot of what I don't like about Marvel. And
I think what it is that I sort of said it before, but like as the time goes on, they have to make movies.
Yeah.
They have to make these movies where, compared to in Phase 1, where it's like, oh, we could go anywhere with this. So that way the characters can have like consistent character arcs.
yeah,
And they can go over like the course of their stories and learn things, which is generally what you want in the stories. But by the end of Phase 3 and then into Phase 4 especially, it's like, okay, now we can't spend so much time on like what the characters learn and like building their character arcs. Now we have to like, because they're going with multiverse, so they have to just start tying all the movies together, and they're starting to restrict themselves a lot more about what the movie can be about.
Yeah.
So they can't spend as much time on the characters, and it's like its own individual story.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that, and that there's a lot of that as well, and I think also just I felt like so many people were just mischaracterized in Avengers or in Captain America: Civil War. I felt there's a ton of like
That was the first really big issue, I think.
Yeah.
Is that's when they had to say, okay, we need the characters to have a reason to do this, or they need to be on this side just because to balance it out, pretty much.
It's like Ant-Man.
Ant-Man's completely shoehorned in,
Ant-Man,
which I like that he's in it, but it's still dumb.
Ant-Man rolls out of a van and is like, I have no idea what's going on.
Actual refugee you brought in to balance the team.
It's like they kidnap Ant-Man. He roll him out of
through matchmaking.
Exactly. And he's like, I have no idea what's going on politically right now, but I really like Captain America. And so I'm going to join his team.
Ant-Man joined him in match through quick play.
Exactly. It was so ridiculous. Like, his was somehow more ridiculous than Spider-Man. Because it was...
Yeah, at least
like,
Spider-Man had the first scene where Iron Man meets him.
Yeah,
had
it's like...
some build-up.
Literally, it's like they didn't even bother making Ant-Man like have a reason to be there other than it's like, well, why is he gonna risk his life? Because he really likes Captain America. And he doesn't like Iron Man. And so Civil War just did so many things that just drove me insane. Like, Civil War is the reason that was the turning point where I started liking DC more than I like Marvel. Is because of that movie. That's what Civil War did to me.
His opinions are his own.
And now I'm just this hot take machine.
nobody
Thanks,
agrees
Civil
with this
War.
guy.
I used to be down with the program. So, I mean, obviously there's good movies after that. Like, I literally said the peak of, like, the MCU is Infinity War, which is, like 5 movies later. So, obviously it didn't ruin it. But that's when, like, I was stopped being in that fanboy mentality.
It was no longer sensationalized for you.
Yeah, it was like, all right,
it's
this
reality.
Yeah, I was like, this is good, this is bad. And I think that was even further cemented with Spider-Man Homecoming, which I watched, and I'm like, it's a Spider-Man movie. It's gonna be great. I love Spider-Man. And I didn't love it, to say the least. So, enough of my opinions, though. Fob, when did the MCU stop hitting for you?
Definitely, probably like Spider-Man Far From Home, very end of Phase 3. To that point, well, we can say Black Widow, I guess, but to that point, I don't know if it was because of quarantine or whatever, I had watched every single Marvel movie save Captain Marvel because Brie Larson didn't want white men in the theater or whatever.
You're respecting her wishes. That's okay. I didn't know she did that, but I probably wasn't going to watch it in the theater anyways.
Yeah, so I actually didn't get a chance to watch that one, but up until that point, I'd watched every Marvel movie. But then after that, it was like, I didn't watch Black Widow. I didn't watch Eternals. I somehow haven't seen Black Panther 2 yet. Don't know how that happened. So I started missing a couple of these movies.
You saw Ant-Man 3, though.
I saw Ant-Man 3. Yeah, I did see Ant-Man 3. That was peak fiction. No, I'm joking. That movie sucked.
That's why I hate the MCU.
So
they did dirty.
I think the reasoning is when I watched Far From Home, I was extremely underwhelmed. I was like, I don't know. I didn't like the movie very much.
Yeah. Like if Civil War and Spider-Man Homecoming didn't exist, like Spider-Man Far From Home was like, I watched that and I was like, what have they done? I felt like that one scene from the Star Wars prequels where Anakin's like, what have I done? I'm like, that's got to be the Marvel executives after that movie came out.
I have a thing where I kind of like most movies in the theaters. Not where I'm trying to delude myself. Well, it is. When I go to the theater, I'm like, I'm really just trying to enjoy myself and be like, okay, I like this. Far From Home was one of them where I'm like, I went to see it and I'm like, yeah, I liked it. And then afterwards I was like, no, it sucks.
Yeah, same type of thing for me. I think obviously, even though it stopped hitting, I mean, I still like some movies after it. Like Spider-Man No Way Home was fun.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange 2 was really good. Thor 4. No, I'm joking. Guardians 3 is like peak fiction. But yeah, that's actually it. That's actually literally it.
Well, and to my point, I liked movies in the MCU after Captain America: Civil War. That's just kind of when it, like, that critical phase came over where I wasn't just blindly loving everything anymore. So
I just stopped watching every movie.
Yeah, so I mean, I the first one I didn't see was Ant-Man 2, and I also skipped Captain Marvel. I just was like, I don't care about those.
You didn't miss anything with Ant-Man 2.
Well, I eventually watched it, unfortunately. Ant-Man 2 is one of those movies where I watched it, I finished it, and I forgot the plot immediately. It was just gone.
I don't remember anything that happened in that movie.
When I think back to my time with Ant-Man 2, it's like a dream where, like, I'll get these random flashes and images. It's like is that a dream or did that actually happen? I get this random image of, like, maybe Ant-Man walking down, like, the school hall and he's, like, really small. Like, I don't know, and then that's it. Or there's something with a car, maybe, where, like...
Yeah,
there's a car. I don't know. So Ant-Man 2,
I have no idea what happened in that movie, and I watched it, so...
Exactly. It's the most... I would say Ant-Man 2 for me.
That's my endorsement of Ant-Man 2, is there's a car in it.
Like, I at least remember what happened in Shang-Chi. I remember what happened in Thor 4, but I don't know what happened in Ant-Man 2. I don't...
Ant-Man 2 is, I would say, the most forgettable movie in the entire MCU, potentially. It's that and Captain Marvel are trying their best. So...
You say that, but I still see Thor 2 over there. Is that not the most
I remember
one?
Thor 2, though.
I remember things about Thor 2.
I don't remember anything about Ant-Man 2. That's the issue.
Yeah.
For me, it's the most forgettable. All right, well, we're on to our last question.
Yeah.
Unless, does anyone else have anything they wanted to say about the MCU stop hitting? Any revisements after hearing everything?
No.
All right. When did Marvel die? For me, when I thought...
Well, first, what do we define as, like,
It's
the death
dead.
of Marvel?
Is it dead?
Well, it is dead right now, but
Yeah,
what do you...
So I would say when
thing is, like-
when I realized it was never gonna be anywhere as good as the peak.
Is it about being dead for you, or is it about being unsuccessful?
Well, unsuccessful, that you can actually track. So I'm not necessarily, but I mean, it's kind of like when the moment you realize that Marvel is probably is finished, in a sense where it's like, it's gonna, like, their current trajectory is one that will not be successful, and it's gonna start failing, and unless they do, like, a massive course correction, like, your current trajectory is a bad one. And it won't be successful, and you're not going to get people invested.
The Marvels did not save Marvel.
No, it was
unfortunately
Not yet.
Not
There's
yet.
still time.
the Deadpool 3 is the only movie coming out next
Is that
year.
even MCU? I mean, yes, everything's
think-
MCU. I think everything is MCU because of
Disney
the multiverse. But
Disney owns it, so they're making it. I'm sure they might.
Multiverse.
I don't know.
Everything's multiverse. They're probably gonna combine it somehow.
I would say that the movie
Deadpool and Deadpool 2 are better than 90% of these movies also.
I can agree with that. I would say that the movie that I watched where I said I thought it was over, I think, was Black Widow. And I thought it was done.
The female-led one, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Those women sure know how to ruin a
You
movie.
sexist, misogynistic
At least you saw
bigot.
it.
Yeah. Hey, look, I put money in, what's her face?
I was busy rewatching Wonder Woman over and over. Sorry.
Exactly. I was putting money in Scarlett Johansson's pocket, so there you go.
Oh, you're comparing her to a stripper because she's a woman?
Yeah.
Pockets.
Oh, true.
That's the real thing.
This is because their women's clothes don't have
Yeah,
pockets.
women don't have pockets.
Liar.
I would say that the combo of Black Widow and Shang-Chi made me feel like it was pretty much over.
Hot take: Shang-Chi's underrated.
I thought people liked it, except maybe the ending or something. That's what I heard.
It was. The reason why I felt that way is because Black Widow was the most uninspired, boring stock movie, like that. I was like to the point where I was shocked that Marvel, which I always thought had somewhat decent quality control, like even with Civil War, I wasn't like, oh, this is like like they were doing some ambitious.
To be
thing.
fair, it
production
was
fine.
Yeah.
the first movie after the pandemic.
And well, but it didn't matter. I'm saying the fact that
So the thing is, like, this is first the biggest studio for movies,
Yeah.
sort of. Or maybe not the
Anyone
biggest.
watch that
but
movie?
It's one of them.
Yeah, it's-
and also there were other like smaller studios still releasing good movies.
Like,
True.
The fact that the movie had like pretty much no new ideas, it felt like and it was like a random flashback movie, something they never done, and the fact that they also put it out and were like, yeah, this is acceptable, made me think like the quality control has gone way down.
I
For
thought
this-
the trailer
The other
for it
thing
was
is
hype.
that they're now like MCU at this point is in the business of we're gonna make movies that service the overall story and not the character-driven ones.
Yeah.
So then to completely make one that's just completely irrelevant to what they're trying to do now.
Well, not only that, the character, even if you wanted to say that they're going back to the character one, it's like it wasn't a good one.
It wasn't a good character-driven one.
It wasn't. It was so. It's one of those movies that I've coined the term ever since I played Sonic Frontiers. It always comes back to Sonic Sonic Forces.
Sonic or Spider-Man.
Oh, Sonic Forces.
Somehow.
Aggressively mediocre, where it is just so mid, so painfully mediocre that it just is like bad. It's like even though there's not anything that's just outright.
It's just there's no reason to see it.
It's boring, and if a movie's boring, that's like what I would say is at least if something is terrible, it's like enjoyable.
Friday the 13th, for example.
If you watch my massive Friday the 13th review on my BudsterBrown,
Now
you'll know
now we're
that
plugging.
I love how enjoyable those movies are. So
They're all very bad.
but they're entertaining.
There's not a single good movie in that series.
Yeah.
I felt entertained by what I saw in your review.
Exactly. It's just it's an
was an
entertaining
extremely
franchise,
entertaining franchise.
not a good one. Entertaining. It's different. Black Widow was not good and not entertaining. It was nothing. It was mid. And so Shang-Chi I watched and while I was watching it, I would thought to myself like, this is starting out really strong. It's like you're bringing in hand-to-hand combat, you're just doing an origin story
Choreography
again.
was beautiful.
And then by the time it got to the end, I was like, it feels like they're out of ideas. Like, it felt like it started out with something special, and then the studio intervened and just squashed the artist. And like,
Stop Asian
the
hate.
finale you wanted to do
Oh, I see.
was not big enough, so we need to make it bigger. And you ruined it. Like, it'd be like if in Spider-Man 1, always comes back, it's like if they're like, hey, Green Goblin and Spider-Man having a fist fight at the end isn't big enough, so we're gonna scrap that and plug something else in. You know, it's like they had an opportunity to do something more like impactful, and they opted to not do that. So
I see.
I think Shang-Chi made me worried that the studio was gonna start squashing the artist, and that I didn't watch Eternals, and then Spider-Man No Way Home just felt like this one-off sort of thing. So it's like, even though I liked it, it wasn't like the overall direction. Once they started going all in on the multiverse stuff, the basic sense I got was just that no one's invested in this plot line. No one really cares. They just want to see cameos, and that is not a sustainable way of life.
Multiverse is its own can of worms, man.
Yeah.
It was good once and like never again.
Yeah, it's like they're like, well, we can't just do something like Galactus. You know, that would be like just like Thanos again. It's like this. We need to do something crazy, but that would have been a better thing. And it's, I think that.
So
Yeah.
I think especially the problem, which we didn't quite get at yet, was that again they didn't let it cook enough.
Yeah.
Because I think that problem though started with Civil War, my thing with Civil War is it's in the complete wrong place in these phases, right? Where Thanos is supposed to be like your big main event and that you're building up to. And then I think what would have been better is having sort of a phase, maybe like a half phase, sort of like phase 4. Or just, I guess that's not half, it's like phase 1 and 2. But yeah, just having a phase where there's
3 or 4
several movies where they have to deal with those issues, where there's half the people left. And they have to save people since they established there's a lot of issues with crime and everything, so I feel like the superheroes should be superheroing and actually stopping crime, maybe.
No,
But yeah, then it's because Civil War's the idea of like the superheroes fighting each other. That's something that is there's a lot of weight to that, and it's really good. It would be really good for right now, or in like phase 4, maybe last year or so, where okay, the big threat's pretty much gone. Like, that was the biggest threat we've seen. So, last big threat is each other.
Yeah.
So that's, like, the biggest thing we can fight right now until they get to something like Galactus or whatever.
Yeah, and I also just think, like, the other reason why it's, like, in that thing, you put Civil War in the wrong time. It's because Endgame, like, all of the Avengers are, like, pretty much not existent as much. It's, like, you have... like Hulk, who's just not really Hulk anymore. You have I heard someone else say this, but you have like Captain America's pretty much Joe Biden.
He looks he has like a very similar look to him.
Yeah. It's then you have and then obviously Iron Man gets killed, and so you're basically your main selling point is no longer there, and then you opt to counter that with Black Widow. Like, hey, I know you guys lost interest, but have you ever thought about Black Widow, a character that's also dead?
Well, the other problem is that movie came way too late. People were asking for a movie for her in like phase 2.
That movie should have been right after Civil War, because the timeline of the movie takes place right after Civil War.
Oh, does it really?
Yes.
I thought it was before all of them.
No, it takes place. The timeline is she's on the run because she is being hunted by the government because she helped out Captain America.
Oh.
Right after Civil War.
That's not right.
So like, yeah, I think it's an issue. I feel like they should have went straight to Spider-Man No Way Home after Phase 3 ended.
Well, they did. They went to Spider-Man Far From Home. That was their other counter.
No Way Home.
Well, I'm saying that was fine though. They should have went to No Way Home at the start of Phase 4.
Disney can never bank the future of the MCU on Spider-Man because Sony's just renting them out. They're renting the character out to the MCU. Like Sony, because then if Sony was just like, we don't want to let you have Spider-Man anymore. It's like they're done. They got nothing. It's like, well, we can't. So they can't bank it. So Spider-Man's always going to be like this character that can never like be like where the main plot of the MCU can never revolve around Spider-Man because they don't have the rights to him. They kind of do, but they don't. So it's like their real first true follow-up to Endgame was Black Widow, which is a flashback movie of a dead character. Okay. Shang-Chi, which at the end of the day was kind of mid, in my opinion.
Had nothing to do with any of the main cast.
Then after that you have Eternals, which was the first rotten movie on Rotten Tomatoes, right?
It lives up to the comic.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So it wasn't very good either.
No Way Home, which is also kind of a one-off. Doctor Strange 2, which even though I liked, is like kind of was underwhelming to audiences. Thor 4, which was just
it was pretty bad.
Like it's almost like they're like the only
biggest miss.
Yeah, it's like the Thor 4 is like we don't. It's like I'm at a loss for words because it was like
it's just what were they
we only
thinking?
have one Avenger left. What if we just ruin his legacy?
What were they thinking?
Yeah, exactly. And then they just make it the biggest joke ever, and it's terrible. And Black Panther 2 actually pretty good.
Yeah,
but
I heard it was good.
It was actually pretty good, but like the point is, think about all the misses I just described, and it's like
Phase 4 was
and
not
like
a
I
good
said,
phase.
when I watched Black Widow, because like I said, Spider-Man: Far From Home, it's like, okay, well that's Sony, really. It's just in the MCU. They're not. It's not reliant. The MCU is not reliant on Spider-Man because it can't be. Black Widow is the first thing they'd like. Let's just like crap that out real quick, get that out of the way, and it's like that's how you want to open your next phase. And I would say I thought it was all downhill after Black Widow. I haven't even gotten into the shows, and then it's like, and then Ant-Man 3 I would say was my last hope, where I was like, maybe they can turn it around, like, and they just did not do that. Anyways, I was talking about mine.
I'm next.
Yeah, you're next. What when did you think, man, the MCU is gone? It's never coming back.
Probably Doctor Strange 2. Now, I say that, and it was probably my favorite movie in Phase 4, but I think that's when it died at the same time.
You mean like after it, or?
Nah, like that movie. Because I feel like people lost interest on like Doctor Strange 2. Now, people lost interest, I guess, from Black Widow and Eternals. Nobody watched those movies. Or Shang-Chi, nobody watched those movies. But I feel like Spider-Man No Way Home kind of revived some of the hype. And then people watched Doctor Strange.
And then Doctor Strange 2 killed it.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't heard like the same. I at least heard like discussion of Black Widow, and then like Eternals was a terrible movie that did awfully, but it was a big release at least. And then Spider-Man No Way Home was a huge deal.
Yeah,
But then everything after that, like, I barely heard about.
Yeah, nobody really talked about it. Once again, probably my favorite movie in Phase 4. Doctor Strange 2. I actually really like that movie. But, yeah, I think after that, it was pretty much dead.
Well, and I agree, and I would also add on to that point, because I think that's not a bad answer, is because, like, Doctor Strange 2 was one of the first movies that really went all in on, like, it's called the Multiverse of Madness. It's not called Doctor Strange 2. It is Doctor Strange 2, but it's called Multiverse of Madness. That's in your multiversal phase. Mm-hmm. And so it's basically, they're like, we're doing the multiverse thing now. This is where we're diving into it. And although I liked the movie, the worst part about it, other than a certain character named America Chavez, not my favorite, but
It wasn't that bad. Overhated.
yeah, whatever. Point is, I think that is the multiverse stuff was the worst part. Like, the coolest part was Wanda in Doctor Strange, and like a lot of the cool things that Sam Raimi did with like a horror thing, like bringing horror into the MCU. That was the cool stuff. The part that was not the cool stuff was the multiverse stuff.
Yeah, that was something they needed to get right, because that's the theme of this phase.
And what they ended up using it for was to just like shoehorn in like fan cameos for like a scene. Be like, see, that's the guy. That's the guy there. See, multiverse, isn't that cool? And it feels very much. Like I said, haven't looked into it, but it feels very much like they were like, hey, Sam Raimi, you made a good movie and all, and did some cool stuff with multiverse, but people just really want to see cameos. When Sam Raimi took over Doctor Strange 2, like there was like 30. After he like basically said, yeah, I'll be part of the project, it went through like 36 rewrites or something, reworkings. They did some reshoots, and it's like that's not an original Sam Raimi movie. So it's, and to be fair, this is not the first time he's dealt with it. He hasn't said anything where like, oh, I hated working with Marvel, they ruined my movie. This is all me. But yeah. I mean, but he's dealt with this before with Spider-Man 3, and it's a little unfortunate for him as a creator, but it's like they botched the multiverse part. Like that's the worst. I would say like all around, that is the worst part of the movie, and that's what you're banking your next phase on, and it's the first movie to go in on it. So the fob saying like, yeah, I liked it, but that's when I thought it was dead. I can completely agree with him on that. I think that's a fine answer. Kyle, when did you think Marvel died?
You already asked me.
Oh, did?
I said, and Or I'm pretty sure, and I said Endgame or Infinity War, take your pick.
No, I think that was
No, that was
stop
for
hitting.
stop. When did it stop hitting?
Oh, that's right. So yeah, I guess it depends what you consider that. Like, is the death of Marvel when they stop making money, or is it when?
I guess when you realized.
Because I think when it comes to like the core
Yeah.
fan base that the MCU has built up,
Yeah.
I don't know that you can make a movie so bad that they'll stop watching.
Yeah.
I think they'll continue hope. I think you would have to like.
If you just get like the $20 million budget superhero movies,
We're
they'll-
still
I think
alive,
it would have
running.
to start in Phase 6 because what happens is I think what would have to happen is an entire phase of movies that are quality on par with like Eternals or the Marvels, take your pick. It would or Ant-Man 3.
2 for
But the
3 so
thing
far.
is- Yes, but Phase 5 already had Guardians 3, which apparently people liked. And I think it did well. I don't remember.
It did do well, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, well, they're good for another phase then. But
Yeah.
that, I mean, people
But
will keep
Marvels
watching this
did.
phase.
Marvels
and then
did really, really, really bad.
They can take the hit.
It was like impressively bad.
I just think that, like, if you think that they can come back, then the answer would be that no, it's not dead. You know, and
I don't know that there's much coming back. It's just that they're gonna keep making these movies, and it's gonna be kind of a downward slope.
well,
Overall, it's a downward slope, like on a graph where it'll go down. Maybe with Guardians 3, it'll go up again, have a like decent hike, but then it's still going downhill overall.
Well, here's the thing. If you look at it, it's like they've already been cutting back. Like they clearly know something's wrong, and they're clearly like, hey, we need to do some reworkings, because the only movie they're putting out next year is that Deadpool 3. The only other movie on this list that only came out like 1 year and 1 year only was Iron Man 2. It was the only Marvel movie to, like, they skipped 2009 to be fair, but like that's like the first movie that like came out where they didn't have anything else that came out that year. And
It's really strange because the production value around Phase 1 was, well, with the Hulk maybe not, but like otherwise the production value was great for them.
I like the Hulk.
They were all I'm saying the production value though, which for the Hulk I felt wasn't as good.
I actually still think it was pretty good, but the point is Phase 1 has a good production value.
Yeah, they were all very good, and they were, well, not all very good, but they were presenting themselves professionally, and they were making a lot of money. And this was at like the very, very beginning.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, but you look at it's crazy because you look at the stacked release schedule that was Phase 3, and even Phase 4 had like consistent releases, and it's also like the pandemic. I guess they didn't have anything in 2020, so they skipped a year.
I think what another big issue is that we sort of said it before, where they're trying to balance. You always try to balance like your overall plot and then your characters.
Yeah.
So now they have a huge, what would you say? Like they've bit off more than they can chew
Yes.
by trying to do the multiverse concept and have their phases revolve around that, and also have almost a completely new cast.
Yeah.
They have hardly any of the original characters.
Well, and it's like,
So they have to make almost origin stories for a lot of these characters, or just introduce you to them well, and then also say this is why they matter for multiverse. They don't have to, but that's what they're trying to do. That's the scope.
well,
They
and
need to lower the scope.
I think that another thing is they're trying to find a way, like, how can we weave X-Men in after the fact? And so they come up with multiverse, but like it doesn't work because like the fundamental design of the MCU world, there's not really room for X-Men to just all of a sudden be integrated. Because if you look at the X-Men's core
That's how they do it.
stories and if you look at X-Men's like core stories and stuff, it's a lot of it is based around, you know, like mutant politics and just like hey, mutant registration, like, hey, you're a mutant, you should register. It's like if you were born with powers, most likely you're a mutant, right?
So I think the way this would go in comics, not that that's the way they did it, but I think if they're gonna go the route of the mutants are coming in through the multiverse.
Yeah.
What I think the comics would do is they would just make it an allegory for just immigration, and then say, hey, this is the multiverse store where if you're coming in through the multiverse, you go through here, and then you get your multiverse ID. And that's how the comics would do it, I feel like. Not that they're... It's kind of a silly concept.
Yeah, and maybe they can just do it, but it's also like hard because you have things where like so many people have superpowers now. It's like this well established, you're a superhero, you're a superhero, you're a superhero.
You got aliens living among society, and it's fine.
It's like,
it's
okay.
like hard to.
In She-Hulk, which none of you probably watched, it's like there's like superhero influencers pretty much. It's just like this normal thing. It's like,
well, yeah, that's what the comics do, though.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's like comics aren't always good, and so
that's true.
And so it's.
I think my point is that sort of concept. That's. I think what they should actually do more, where they just casually integrate a lot of things as part of the world.
Yeah.
And if it's silly or not, just play it straight and.
Yeah.
Just go with that, because that's how you get the developed world. With a lot of comics, the difference with the movies is that in the comics, everything is super developed. All the characters are already there. So the stories then become like She-Hulk going to the grocery store and this happens.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I just get worried just because I don't know. They don't have a clear vision for the future, and it's like it's almost like they had a vision and then they kind of bailed out on the vision because they're like, no one's interested, and now they don't know what they're doing. And so I think if they're gonna come back, and this isn't like how to fix the MCU, maybe we'll do that one day, but it's basically just they don't have a vision, and because they don't have a vision and they've just churned out these kind of mid movies with no characters, new characters that people love. It's like no one's excited. Like no one's excited about, like, I don't know anyone that's excited as Shang-Chi as a character. Even if you like the movie. It's like, is anyone like, I can't wait to see Shang-Chi again. I can't wait to see Ant-Man's daughter again.
I'm excited to see Shang-Chi again.
Well, there you go.
I'm the only
that's
one.
the thing, right?
Yeah.
Because with Civil War is an amazingly successful movie because, or even just same concept with Avengers 1, where it's a lot of these different characters. There's like two kinds of people going to see these movies.
Yeah.
You have, and sometimes there's like overlap where they feel both ways, right?
Yeah.
Which is why it draws in such a huge audience. You have people who have been seeing a lot of these movies with the characters.
Yes.
Or they're like, oh, I like these comic book characters, I'm going to go see this movie since a lot of them are in it. And you have other people who say, I've just been following the MCU story, so I got to keep up on it. And there used to be that huge overlap of those audiences, but they experience it sort of the same way.
Yes. And yeah,
It was still sort of appealing to both until kind of Civil War, I think, messed that up. But like Avengers 1 and then to a lesser extent Infinity War was still doing that well, where it says at least trying to build up the characters along their story and then fit them into that new big narrative overall. And they aren't really doing that now, where you have, it feels like the individual movies are the ones that aren't very character driven, and they're trying to find their way, like grasp their way into the MCU overall narrative, and they can't really quite pull it off.
No, they can't. Yeah, it's they didn't do a yeah. I think it's, I can agree with that, and I think the main reason that it's dead is just because they got rid of all the old characters, and then the new characters that they introduced aren't compelling to audiences, and their new main storyline isn't compelling, and they didn't churn out very many quality movies. They dumped a bunch of shows on Disney Plus that are also varying quality.
Loki was fire.
That's why I said varying. I didn't really like Loki that much, but I get that a lot of people did. But that's the thing. That's a legacy character. Loki is a legacy character. Out of the new characters that they've introduced, it's
She-Hulk,
like,
bro.
it's like like they haven't captured the audience, and I feel like early on, out of good faith, like Marvel audiences are like, well, we'll show up and see what they have cooking. And what they had cooking was like top ramen, unfortunately, and it was just it, and that's just kind of how it is. So that's why I think the MCU is dead. I think the culmination of me realizing like, yeah, it's gonna go downhill. I don't think they're gonna be able to resuscitate it. Was Black Widow and Shang-Chi. Who knows? Maybe they'll come up with some
It's gonna get
new
revived
ideas.
with Captain Marvel 2. I'll tell you what.
I mean, yeah, that's true. People are gonna, when the Marvels
Captain
hits,
Marvel too sweet.
when the Marvels hits D+, it's gonna break all the streaming records. Everyone's gonna watch it. The only reason people haven't seen it in theaters, they're waiting for it to get home.
Exactly.
And then everyone's gonna be like, the streaming sensation, the Marvels.
Marvel's way home.
I'm telling you, man. The MCU is back.
Yeah.
It's here to stay.
Well, has anyone got any final thoughts? Should we wrap the podcast up? Podcastle.
Let's see. I have like thoughts, but they would go into tangents.
Yeah. I feel. Well, hey, we'll be back eventually. We'll be back next week. Maybe we'll be back next week. Hopefully, we'll be back next week. We can discuss some more fun things. I got a couple of interesting ideas cooking in the brain here, cooking in the noggin. But if you watch this, thank you all so much for watching. What did you guys think? When do you think Marvel died? When did you think the peak of Marvel was? Let me know in the comments down below. It's good seeing you all. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for watching. Remember to go to that poll and decide whether you want the Podcastle to be its own channel or part of the main channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you later.
Bye.